Hello, everybody, and welcome to BIMA's Untold Stories, Art and Transformation with Javier Spanky Loco. Before we begin, I would like to remind everyone to please silence your cell phones and that food and drink is allowed in the auditorium tonight. BIMA would also like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is within the Aboriginal territory of the Suquamish people of Clear Saltwater or the Suquamish. Expert fishers, canoe builders, and basket weavers, the Suquamish live in harmony with the lands and waterways along Washington's Central Salish Sea as they have for thousands of years. Here, the Suquamish live and protect the land and waters of their ancestors for future generations, as promised by the Point Elliott Treaty of 1855. We pay respect to their elders, past and present. Our guest speaker tonight is an iconic artist here at BIMA whose installations were featured in our Dia de los Muertos exhibition. This event will include a conversation with Daniel Frederick, Executive Director of Coffee Oasis, and an audience Q&A afterwards. As always, BIMA thanks every one of you for coming tonight to support the arts. Now please welcome Spanky Loco.
Thank you very much. My good friend Daniel. I'm Spanky. They said I was gonna do a lecture. I've never done a lecture before, so I don't know about the lecture part. But we're gonna have a really good conversation. And before we get started, I wanna for those of you that don't know what I do, I'd like to show this video montage that includes some community work, some of my art, street art. Working in institutions. Maybe you might see some video clips in juvenile hall, at the Washington Youth Academy. So a little bit of everything with my own kids, working with my own kids, painting businesses here in Kitsap. So enjoy the video. Thank you. And then we get into the conversation. Thank you.
The bass melody.
Thank you.
Spanky asked me in September, I think it was, when we were actually just getting to know one another, if I would come and interview him here, and I said yes. And then a week ago, thankfully, he reminded me this was it, because in the meantime, my beautiful wife and I had a baby. And so our little baby's here. It is such a gift to be here. And my hope tonight is that what up to this point has been an unknown story or an untold story to you will be told. The little I know about art is this, that I often don't understand art right away. It takes a long time with it, and it also takes getting to know the person behind that art. And so my guess is probably many of you aren't familiar with the medium that Spanky uses, being that tattoo or graffiti art or something else like that. And maybe if you were to go by it, you wouldn't stop and see the masterpiece that it is. And in part, that's because we don't see the master that is actually informing that art and creating that art. And so tonight, I hope you will be told the untold story of Spanky Loco. So we're going to start linearly, and we're going to go all the way back to the beginning of your formation, your early years. So Spanky, could you tell us a little bit about the experiences that shaped you growing up?
As far as experiences shaping me, first and foremost, thank you so much. I appreciate you, a friend, coming to do the project. Before I get into the question, I'm really blessed to have a good friend like Daniel and his family that support what we do. So it was natural for me to say, hey, come and participate with me and help me make it a little bit more comfortable as I sit here and tell my story. But to answer the question, I feel like a few different things forged my early beginnings, some positive, some not that positive. At an early age, I remember struggling with learning, struggling with paying attention in class. I struggled with finishing work. I struggled with the language at an early age. My parents migrated from Guadalajara, Mexico. My dad was from a small ranch, so he wasn't, super educated. My mom, God bless her family, her mom saw the importance in education, and she was able to finish high school, go to I believe attend a university in Guadalajara, and so the transition from growing up in a Mexican American or in a Mexican household, because that's what it was predominantly, was straight from Mexico, and my parents didn't really understand the culture. They didn't understand music. They didn't understand the law. They didn't understand the schools. They didn't understand the homework. They didn't understand my friends. They didn't understand, a lot of things that fell on our lap. And I think at a young age, when you're confused and you think like you don't belong, and you feel like you're not accepted, or you feel like the teacher doesn't love you, then all of those are early impressions that you start accepting in your life as an outcast, because that's how we felt in the area. Even though we're predominantly, Latino community, you felt the police didn't love you, and you felt like the administration had a tough time with your attention disorder or whatever that was, or your lack of knowing the language because your parents only spoke to you in Spanish. I mean, I remember being in ESL, English as a second language was my introduction to school, and it felt like I was, like I was not smart enough, like I wasn't smart enough. And so when you're in that box growing up, I feel like survival kicks in, and then you wanna do something to escape. And I feel like art was my way to escape. If I ever had a problem with an administrator, I'd pull out my books and I'd sketch a little, or, you know, whenever I had a problem at home, I'd pull out my books and I'd sketch a little. And of course, I was sketching more than I was doing homework. So, you know, I think there was some good, and there was some bad that kind of forged the early beginnings to the introduction to art for me. Yeah.
So you've told me a little bit about the the draw away from your family towards the gang life, and that being you didn't find belonging at school. You felt kind of in a world in between where home wasn't really home as much, and so life on the streets became more of a home for you. Tell us what drew you into gang involvement and what that meant for you in those formative years.
You know, it's interesting because when the rest of your peers are doing it, it doesn't seem abnormal. Like if my friend's parents didn't speak English and they didn't understand, and my friend was falling through the cracks, then now I felt more accepted. Now I felt like more normal, you know, that, okay, I'm not the only failure. You know, I'm not the only one failing. He's failing too. And then his parents don't understand. In his household, they eat like I eat. And their house smells like my house smells. And they talk like we talk. And now I think the underserved make their own community. And so, you know, once you start getting into dressing a certain way and being exposed to other kids that had parents that were gangbanging, then that was the introduction to that lifestyle. That was like, I remember Droopy from 18th Street. It was a young boy. I know he was already having relations with his girlfriend in junior high, because they would talk about that. And they were like almost a grown couple, and he would disclose how like his parents didn't really care about them, and drugs were accessible in his house, and that type of behavior, you know? And yeah, someone was like, oh yeah, Droopy? Oh no, he's a real gangster. His parents don't care about him. Have you ever gone to his house? It says Droopy all over his walls. Droopy 18th Street, all over his walls. And so that was I think the start of relationships with the guys that fell through the cracks, that I think weren't smart enough to sit at the teacher's table, that weren't, you know, dressing like the other kids. So therefore we were making up our own groups. So that was kind of the early introduction. And the major gang that was in the area, that was not a gang that I participated with. It was just the most influential at that time. And you know, there was girls from that gang. There was guys from that gang. I mean, there was kids bringing in tattooed needles in yarn and doing tattoos in class. It was my other first introduction to gang life and tattooing, and the association with marking yourself and identifying, and was in junior high too, with another girl from 18th Street. And it was like, wow, like you're introduced to that lifestyle, and now you're accepting that. Because as you're younger, you're like, oh, gangs, no. Drugs, no. Violence, no, is what you're taught. And now your friends are, you know, in that lifestyle, they're participating. It doesn't seem out of the ordinary. It doesn't seem abnormal. So those were the early, I think, introductions into the gang life, the gang lifestyle. Not introduction to my own neighborhood and my own peers that embraced me, but that was my first knowledge of that, my first interaction with it. Yeah.
So we've talked about how your family life formed you, and how becoming a part of this other family, or this gang, formed you. How did art begin forming you, and when did that happen?
So my parents were always busy. They weren't neglectful. They were actually very responsible. My mother, very responsible. My father never paid a bill late ever in his life. He paid all his taxes. He paid everything on time, made it to work on time. If he said he was gonna do something, he would do it 15 minutes early. He showed up with family members on time, and he was a very, very responsible person. My mother, the same, uh, uh, a very strong-willed woman, very smart, keen, and willing to do whatever to get ahead as far as work came into play. And they created their own business. My father worked in a mill, like in a steel mill, for my infancy in the Culver City, Venice, West LA area. And my mother worked for she did some sewing for sportswear companies, some sportswear companies in Santa Monica, West LA area. And then they gradually achieved the American dream by buying their own equipment and buying their own sewing machines and contracting work with legends like Maui and Sons, Body Glove. We had a close relationship with their families. I remember them coming over to get quotes for, bathing suits and swimwear and things that, production that they needed. And, when you have a business relation, sometimes it extends and turns into a personal relationship. So it wasn't uncommon to have them come over for a birthday party or whatever. But that lack of time for the family was what I think nurtured my need for being in the street. It was like my parents were so busy achieving the impossible that it left me like wanting to belong to something. It left me wanting to have purpose and wanting to have meaning. So my dad, like, he didn't know that like when he was dropping me off in the neighborhood, that neighborhood where we grew up at, because by then we migrated, they started doing so well that they moved to like the LAX airport area in Los Angeles. And our neighborhood was, where we grew up was, where my gang neighborhood is at now, and that's it. That's like in the middle of downtown and the beach. That was kind of where we were at in the West LA, West Los Angeles. So it wasn't downtown, but it wasn't all the way west to the beach. And when we were on the main pipeline on Venice Boulevard, that's where we grew up. And so I think my dad didn't realize that, that the neighborhood was babysitting me, that the homeboys were keeping an eye on me, not just something innocent like going to Osvaldo's house or going to Ismael's house or getting dropped off at, the homie's house. It was way more impactful than that. Then, we had time on our hands and we were now hanging out, we were identifying. Now the older homies were like, they were like, well, you guys are here all the time. Just be from the hood, And art was prevalent for me because I was big on graffiti. My biggest thing, because I never stopped doing the art, and I continued to get in trouble for the art and not doing work, and I think using art as my escape really transformed the art that I was doing. It went from sketching comic book characters to doing graffiti block letters and, emulating prison art from guys that were coming home, and we're looking at peacocks and theatrical faces, and clowns was big for me. That was a big entity for me that that resonated with me. I always felt like the clowns really touched my heart, and I connected with the clown, and I always loved, being associated or painting a clown, and those were kind of like my early introductions into 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 s- into street life, but then still using mediums like the corner liquor store and spray paint. And keep in mind, in those days, spray painting was not available at Blix. You know, it was like it was at the hardware store. And if you were a tagger like I was, you wouldn't go and buy the paint. All my friends were like, "No, you don't buy the paint, silly. We're taggers. We steal the paint." You know, it was like just partaking in criminal activity at a young age that you don't think is that serious, but it starts to develop into serious stuff. You know, like now you're under the watch of the older guys in the neighborhood. Now they see what you're doing. They see how brazen you are. They see how brave you are, or they see how brave you aren't. They see if you're an asset to the neighborhood, if they need you, if they don't need you. And at the time, it was like graffiti was so big for me as an outlet that I was defacing the whole neighborhood. All the older guys are like, you know what? We gotta have a conversation. Like, we don't want you doing graffiti. We don't want you doing art. And there I go, being up against more boundaries, more walls. Can't do art, can't do graffiti, you can't do this, you can't do that. So the escape for that was joining the gang. It was like, this is the option. You start writing, or you write in the gang. You put up the neighborhood, don't put up that, what you're writing, put up this, you know? But all that came with a big baggage, you know, that I didn't understand at the time. I was only a kid. We were all just kids, you know, me and my friends and peers of mine. But art still, at that point, still prevalent in my life. And now I'm looking at gang members to tattoo because I want to be expressive in that form. I want to go and deface our local business or home or whatever. And then I want to go tattoo and, you know, put your neighborhood on you. I was notorious for going to different neighborhoods, tattooing gang tattoos on gang members. And it was, again, we're talking 20, 30 years ago, you know, or more, when tattooing was not that common. You wouldn't see it at the airport. You wouldn't see it on actors and soccer players, and it wasn't on commercials. It was extremely tattoo, very frowned upon. You know, it was like identification of a nocturnal life, of a different type of lifestyle. And when you were tattooed at that time, it wasn't like you were building your future, working another medium to do great things. Another thing that was frowned upon. And at a young age, I remember having visible tattoos. Very, very young, and my neighbors would be like, "Man, you ruined your life so quickly," you know, like, and me, I saw it as an accolade. I was like, nobody has their neighborhood across their neck like this, and nobody has this. And yeah, I mean, on one perspective, yeah, it was destroying my, you know, my appearance for a normal society. But in my environment and in my group, I was doing amazing things with art. So,
So we have quite a journey to take from tagging in your neighborhood in LA to the Bainbridge Art Museum. Buckle up. Yeah. We're on a journey.
Yes.
So
I heard we had 2 hours.
one step at a time.
Yes.
So to start that transformation, you move from being the kid who's on the street stealing painting fences to this becoming a profession for you, where you're tattooing. You work with a lot of mediums. You're a tattoo artist. You're a rap artist. You do beautiful works of art that were hung here.
Thank you.
How does that start forming in you, and how do you start sharing that with the world, and it becomes more and more of a profession for you?
So, I think around a little after 2000, maybe 2004, I was heavier involved in the gangs, and I was still tattooing a lot now at that point, tattooing a lot of gang stuff, and I remember being in prison. I got sent to prison in '99 and was in prison till about 2000, a little after that. A small experience with prison. But while I was in prison, I was partaking in programming. I'd go to clubs, prison offer you different clubs that you can join and things. And there was the Raza Club. The Raza Club was the Mexican American, homies or Mexican guys that were in prison, and they had a club, and we listened to music or eat a little bit of food or talk about culture, or talk about art and things. And that's where I discovered Mexican MCs, Mexican rappers, which I had never really heard around that time. And the MCs were all apparently from my area. I was doing time in Oregon for these robberies. So the guys there, they're like, well, yeah, they're from LA. They're from down south. You don't hear this stuff. You don't know this stuff. And I was like, well, no, my sound was like Eazy-E and like hardcore West Coast stuff. Spice One, Eazy-E, E40, Too Short, LA or West Coast icons. And at the time, it was still a little bit underground. It wasn't as mainstream as now. And so I think that interest in, wow, Latino artists, Mexican artists, and I'm in another state with a group of guys that never stepped in LA, and they love this music. And I thought, wow, well, what an interesting thing. I end up getting paroled, and I actually meet a gentleman that was doing music at the time out of my area, and he had radio play. He had a really strong influence with the Chicano rap and Chicano music, and I think we had hit it off so well that I think he had started inviting me to the studio and to recordings and doing this and that, and he really talked about a lot of hardcore stuff, and he seemed like a very real guy, reputable guy. But as I knew him more, he wasn't that honest, and then he wasn't that responsible, and then sometimes he'd meet at the right time, sometimes he wouldn't show up. So then I got to understanding what kind of character he was, and like how his raps didn't really like represent who he really was. Like, he didn't seem that hard to me. He didn't seem that gangster to me. He seemed like a fraud, to be honest with you. And I feel like that was motivation for me. And I was like, well, I could do music. If this guy's talking about some real street stuff, then I got that easy. And that was the start of music for me, another medium. And visited some studios, started working on music myself. And like everything, I stuck with it and ended up getting a distribution deal with a big company. EMI Latin at the time was a big distributor, and I think that was my start to being exposed to traveling out of the country, seeing new cities and seeing new people, and actually being cultured and being introduced to beautiful things in life. And my influence was still gang influenced, and talking about the streets was part of that. Having beef with other rappers was part of that. Having a bravado, all of that was part of that, and I embraced it. The more hate I got, the more I liked it. The more problems I had, the more I invited them. It was, I think, my trauma from having to survive all those years and not being accepted and being an outsider. And I thought, well, if he don't like me, I could care less. We're conquering the market. So we'll write a little song about you later. Don't worry about that. So beef for me was easy. Get in line. Let's do it. And so I think that gang bravado and all of that resonated with my music at the time. And I stopped doing art. So once I started doing music and touring and doing these events and got exposure to this new thing, I left art alone. No more tattooing. I stopped tattooing for whatever reason, yeah.
So what got you back into tattooing and let's use that kind of as a segue and into this journey north, which I know I don't want to jump over all that, but you moved from even where you're at not feeling accepted and then going, I'm moving to the Pacific Northwest. Right? And
Yes.
so what got you back into art and then
Yes.
traveling north, and we've talked a lot about that move and what that meant for you in wanting something else for your life, but also being in a place that there was discomforts too. So what got you back into art and then the move up north?
I think once I started that snowball of the music, it really kicked off for me, and I really did a lot of damage with the music. I ended up touring in Japan, did events in Mexico City, went to Brazil, been to Rome, performed in Barcelona, been to Madrid, performed in Sao Paulo, performed in Tokyo, and it really kind of opened up new avenues for me, and I had like now I could like I had something that I had built up that no one could take from me. I had something that finally was mine, that I had worked on, and that accolade, I didn't have to find it in the gang life. I found it in success and feeding my kids. And at the time, I had lost kids. I had kids in a previous relation. My gang involvement prohibited me from being able to be around my kids. My ex-wife really gave me a hard time, lost my kids over it. It really was detrimental and impactful in many ways. And at that point, I felt like I cherished the hard work that I had put into the music, even though it was full of negativity and it had a lot of negative agendas. I feel like it was still an outlet where I could speak my mind and show my hard work and express my willing to be a independent entrepreneur and to hire other people and to employ and to succeed. And I think that was something that was impactful in that way. And then because I had made so much noise, now I had different people wanting to send me messages or go out or connect or collaborate. So my network was a lot huger. And I met a gentleman that had followed my music for a while, and he said, man, I'm a tattooer. I'd love to take you out, and I'd love to take you to dinner, man. I love your music. Let's get together. And I was looking at his profile, and I was like, man, this guy looks like a dope dealer. He looked like a dope dealer, like chains and gold grill and completely tattooed. And I thought, tattoo artist, weird. That's not a tattoo artist I remember, like it was just weird. And I remember like not wanting to meet him, but then like I did want to meet him, like not wanting to because I didn't know who he was or who sent him or that type of mentality, which was, a broken mind, a broken traumatized mind, It's not like, oh, wow, thank you. Let's get together for lunch. It's always like, who sent you? You know what I'm saying? Who sent you? And so I accepted the invitation. And he ended up being a very nice guy. He wasn't a dope dealer. He was a tattoo artist, and he was a hardworking tattoo artist. And he had a bunch of new equipment and knew a lot of people in that industry, and really introduced me to something that I should have stuck with. He reintroduced me to something that I should have stuck with. When I met him, I literally wanted to kick myself in the head because I don't know why I stopped tattooing. And the culture had grown so massively that it wasn't what it was before. It wasn't as taboo. It wasn't, this hidden gem. It was now you see it on big billboards at the airport in Europe. Now you're looking at soccer players all sleeved down, and you're looking at, Tide commercials with moms with tattoos and things, So it came at an interesting time. And when he reintroduced the art to me, that's what did it for me. That triggered me to hyper involve myself in the arts. So I was so motivated at now picking up a pad again and drawing penitentiary style art, emulating these images again. It took me back to my roots. So, it didn't seem as criminal. It didn't seem as bad. Now soccer moms are, getting these designs, and now, everyone wants a clown and a clown girl and all these designs that for us meant other things at the time. It was a whole different world, a whole different environment. And so I nurtured that involvement, that time with tattooing. I got so involved that I'd be gone for weeks at a time tattooing. Patricia, my wife, and myself, we'd kind of sit there and kind of look at each other and be like, well, that's all we got, Like, be patient with me and I'll be patient with you, but most importantly, let me go out there and get it and let me figure it out. And as we're building these connections and building our household and building our business, then, it's something that we had to accept. But a few weeks of tattooing and really involving myself and putting all my work ethic into that. I mean, I tattoo at 11 in the morning. If I was out of town tattooing, for example, I was in Cologne, Germany for a small stint, and the days that I was there were very limited, so I had to tattoo and use the time wisely. I'd get up at 11 in the morning, 10, 11. I tattoo all day till about 10, 11 at night. Then I had a guy come out and close his market. And then we'd start his sleeve at about midnight till about 4, 5, 6 in the morning. And that was the routine for several weeks. For several weeks, I'd be on that, like, oh, we could do it tomorrow. Like, no, we're going to do it tonight. And it was more not to prove to the client, but more like to prove to myself, like, do you really have the luxury to say, oh, I did that tattoo between noon and 5. Please, don't bother me. I need to go get my rest. No, it was like brushing up, learning more things, going to the shop and learning from the guys in Germany, looking and paying attention and asking questions and what do you use and what kind of needle is that and what. And, I think involving myself so much also led me to the point where like all the tools available made it so that if you know about tattooing, if you see a design, you can copy the design and just apply it on the skin, right? You print it, you copy it, you apply it on the skin, and really you're tracing it, you're redesigning, redrawing it really on the skin. And so I think even an experience like having clients tell me, no, I don't want that copy of the design. I want an original design by Spanky Loco. What's going on here? That was challenging for me because I didn't have original designs. I was simply emulating designs that I had grown up looking at, these classic designs that other guys drew up. So for me to be like, all right, hold on, I'll get you an original design, and pulling out a sketch or something and sweating as I'm turning in this original design to you, hoping that it'll work out, I mean, that was tough, but it also was like, okay, I want to quit today. I'm never going to tattoo again, ever. You know, it put me up against things that I was very, very uncomfortable doing. And now if you see like the video, I'm not copying designs. I'm drawing directly on the skin. And it was something that was a huge thing for me because I didn't want people to say like, oh, look at the rapper guy. Now he tattoos. Look at the rapper guy. Now he's tattooing. He's stealing from our culture, or he's stealing from what we do, or look at him jumping on something that, but in reality, tattooing was my first form of self-expression. It was what kept me a little entertained and busy while I was out in the street. And I tell the homies, like, let me draw something on you. Nah, no drawings, man. You're too creative. Like, we don't want that. I want gang stuff. I want the gang letters, put the hood on me, but let me draw you like a dragon, a little, you know, no. And then you're like, man. You know, that type of stuff. Once I had the ability to get creative, and then that was something else that I got involved in. I got over that fear of I can't do that, to like, I only do it this way. And it's a rare art form. Freehanding tattoos is not a common thing. A lot of artists are not comfortable with it, and that's the only way I tattoo. I tattoo original designs on people. I prefer it that way. Yeah.
So bring us north from your experiences of growing your tattoo business and the success you experienced. What prompted you to come up to beautiful Pacific Northwest, specifically Silverdale? And
I think at the time we were going through COVID. COVID was prevalent, and my kids were locked up. We weren't in like this luxurious spot where my kids had things accessible to them. It was very limited. We were in a basic apartment complex, but it was tough because the management didn't allow the kids to go out, and it was kind of tough. And because at this point I'm already touring, I'm already doing national conventions and international conventions. I'm taking artists with me now on a global scale. Now at this point now we're doing commercials. I'm doing television. I'm doing some motion pictures. I'm doing cameos for rappers, and doing cameos on big productions. I think because of the touring and because being able to see and visit one of my stronger markets, I thought like, well, one day I'm gonna take my kids going out at the lake, and one day I'm gonna take my kids out to where they film Twilight, and I'm gonna one day. It's always one day, and I get to send pictures back home, and I always like, oh, I'm in this extravagant, beautiful place, and I'll be home soon. I got tired of feeling guilty about that, and I was like, hey, we're gonna leave. One day we're gonna take off. We'll try something new, and it was our strongest market. And back home, I had already I feel like we had a lot of accomplishments. I had my tattoo shop in Los Angeles, a strong clientele, but I think looking at my children and looking at my upbringing and looking at my environment, I feel like I wanted to do something different for them. I wanted to try something that might better their quality of life. And because I could get up and pack a bag and leave and, go anywhere I wanted to, I think we had the luxury to say, well, let's give it a shot. And literally we, went like this, and we're like, there. That's where we're going, And so nothing crazy or well thought out. It was like, nothing intricate about the process. It was like, we applied to a couple different places, and this is the one that accepted us. Let's go. you know. And I remember telling my wife, I was like, I don't know. Like I initiated the idea, and then as we're getting close, it's like I don't know. It's kind of far. It's kind of far. It's out there. I go, Dad, let me see on the map. I go, wow, that's not even Seattle. That's out there, right? And I remember her response. She's like, it's all out there. All of it. Don't matter where you pick. It's out there. It's not home. It's far. And you're right. You're right. So we made the move, and again, COVID, the owner of the building where I was at wasn't such a super nice guy. He was all right. He wasn't a super nice guy. We still had no breaks during COVID, but of course tattoo shops were not allowed to open, so that was very tough. I think the population and lack of resources makes it tough as well. So my kids, although they were doing great and doing their best in under those circumstances, I felt like maybe bringing them to an environment where they could get support with their academics and things. And of course, again, like Los Angeles is my backyard. I'd be present with 5-6 guys and attack an amphitheater at a concert with all my promo and make my presence felt, to standing at a gas station selling CDs, to hosting a big art event, to doing film or whatever. So our presence in Southern California was prevalent. I felt like there was nothing to conquer except for the rest of the world, and to move to the Pacific Northwest was exciting for us. It was really, really exciting when we made that move. It was different. It was different. It was.
Tell us a little bit about that difference. When you came up, you opened a studio, right?
Yeah.
What did that look like, and what was your experience? You're opening a studio.
That was amazing. I mean, we were welcomed by clients. We were welcomed by the same market that had always accepted us. I think what was tough for us was the area was we set up shop at a predominantly Latino area. So in SeaTac, in Seattle, in SeaTac specifically, next to SeaTac, there's a town called Burien, and in Burien it's predominantly Latino. I had my shop in Burien only because my clientele would show up in Burien because of the host and the person that would receive me out here. He had a shop there, so it was natural for me to say, okay, I'm gonna be in Burien, or oh, there's an opportunity in Burien. Once we opened the shop, we had a vandalism at the shop almost immediately, and that really, that's really what kind of like made me tap into my third eye, or it made me aware of trauma and even like the things that I had gone through in my area, and it really made me think back about a lot of things. Because what happened was, once our shop was vandalized, and what I mean by vandalized, I don't mean someone came to tag. Someone came and lit up the shop. So the shop was burnt up. Luckily, the inside was intact, but the outside of the shop was completely destroyed. The owner of the building, I feel like was more concerned about being able to receive insurance payment, which of course it's important. The building was on fire. He had to reface it, but it left us without a business. It left our startup money and our plans of progressing and opening up another shop and moving from Silverdale to a actual house. And we had a baby coming, so we had
expenses that we were looking at, and all of that just kind of shifted when law enforcement started looking at our business as more of a criminal like hub. So as opposed to like getting support and getting my building refaced, we actually had law enforcement like discourage us from moving forward. We didn't get any help with the shop. They never found anyone that came and did the vandalism, and we stayed without a building for. I mean, we stuck with it for about 6 months, but they didn't end up fixing the building till about 11 months later. So it took almost about a year. During that time, I kind of went in this rabbit hole of like, well, why won't they help us? That's kind of weird, you know? I mean, we're contributing to the economy here. I'm bringing in clients from all over the world at this point. I got guys flying in from Canada, from France. I had a guy coming from France. A gentleman from Hawaii have flown in. I had people coming from California. Hey, what's in Seattle? Oh, Seattle's beautiful. Come and check it out. It's amazing. Sounds amazing. I'll check it out. And so that was the promotion and the push was like, all right, well, yeah, we're in Seattle now. But, the lack of help and the criminalization of the arts, that really it did something to me. It really did something impactful to me, to think that my whole life I had to struggle with being supported and being accepted and being allowed to be at the table and being welcomed and, being part of something. And again, here we go. It's like my business was not approved or accepted in the community. We were looked at like criminals. My legendary status and everything that we had worked for, going out of the country and doing these huge events and organizing these things didn't mean anything at that point. It was like you're bringing this gang culture to our area, and we don't like it, and we're not going to help you at all. And that was my first introduction into seeing how things worked here in the area. I applied for a lot of grants, applied for a lot of beautification jobs, applied for support. I even showed up at a building. I remember I was online and they were like, if you're a minority, if you have your own business, we will help you. We help with funding, we'll help with this and that. And I'm like outside of their building, and I'm like, I'm outside of your building, and it says right here, you help minorities, and you help, oh, no. You got it all wrong. We help organizations that help businesses and help the community. So we don't actually help people, we help organizations that help people. So I thought, well, let me go figure that part out. So I went and did my homework, and all of last year was like developing this nonprofit and this situation where we can be heard and where we can have a voice and where we can look for more like-minded youngsters that are going through situations like the ones I experienced, and saying like, well, if you feel like you're being criminalized, then come and hang out and paint with us. Or let me come to your institution, or let me, and that's what that turned into. I really dove into like the whys. Why are we being treated this way? Why, and I'd go to city council members' offices and school board meetings, and go look at people that are in a position of power, in a position of influence, that don't use their influence to help people that are suffering. And as I met more organizations and more people that did that work, then I realized, like, man, this is just like gangbanging. I was like, this is just like gangs. It's like the top gang goes for the top money. The The ones that don't want you to be involved in the game, they're gonna talk bad about you. The ones that don't agree how you look, they're gonna defame you. If you help a certain class, they're gonna oppress you. I mean, I remember going to a Humane Society fundraiser, and everyone's like, ooh, going bananas to help the weenie dogs and the chihuahuas, and you know, like, I respect it. I respect it.
Tread carefully. Tread carefully.
Yeah, that's what I say. I respect it. I respect it. You know what I mean? Like, but like if you talk about why I work with gang affected or you know, violence affected children. I work with kids that don't have hope or are marginalized, or I mean, it's like crickets, or it's like lack of willingness. I mean, even looking for a building, I've been to a place and I go, I work with kids. I'm an artist, but I work with kids. And I figure, well, if I tell them my tattoo, they're probably gonna think I'm gonna bring some questionable people to the building. So I'm gonna tell them I work with kids. Well, then the conversation goes to like, well, they're not gonna destroy our building, are they? These kids, right? They're troubled, right? They got problems, right? And like, I don't know, you just learn people's behavior. And that was all of last year, was like, I love this area and I love what the beauty of it, but I feel like the lack of initiatives to support people of color are very prevalent. You know what I mean? Like, resources are extremely limited if you look a certain way. You know, that was for sure. And then as you come away from the big city, then it gets more and more prevalent. You know, I remember driving on the highway and having like a caravan of guys in trucks and Trump flags and like going crazy on the highway, you know? And I'm just like, well, they like, take that to the ghetto. Like, if you feel that strong to use your vehicle as a tool to express that much hate, that much animosity towards that type of people, why are you doing it here? Go do it in a barrio. Go wave the flags and go bananas out there, you know? But it's like you feel comfortable in the area, you feel comfortable expressing that hate. So when people actually see that and they see you in that behavior, it's like, wow, you know, like really, it's just different for me. It's different. It's very, very different. We kill each other. We Mexicans, we kill each other. We hate on each other. We gangs. So when you see, you know, passive aggressive behavior, and you see that, I mean, even though we're involved in this activity, it's like a shock when you see white America really hates you in that way. You feel me? Like, it's just, it's, for me, I used it as fuel to do more work and to get more in depth and to find more answers and to do more murals. And now what I'm doing is, at this point, when I see how different it is here, now I'm going to Latino businesses and saying, are you okay? How can I support you? Because I had my business burned down and nobody came and helped me. So if you got walls that you want me to paint, I'll be more than glad to come and paint them. And I got a pretty strong following. I'll post it and I'll probably have a few people come for lunch and we could start generating activity here. I got you. And that was all of last year, like investing in businesses and investing in kids and walking into the youth academy and saying, what can I do to help out kids here? Like for being the minority and being the 3%, and these institutions were not the 3%. And the institutions were the 90%. So it's like, how does that make sense? That we're a small demographic here, but in prison, we're the huge demographic. In the welfare lines, we're the huge demographic. We're, in places of hardship, we're the biggest demographic, but we're not getting the resources, and we're not getting the love and the understanding. It just reminds me of back in high school again, Droopy, hanging out with Droopy and looking at the teacher and the teacher disregarding us, and only white kids at the table, only the white kids, and they're very attentive, and the teacher's engaging, and I was like, man, I was like, man, I want to sit there. I wish I could sit there. I want to learn. I want to absorb that, but it wasn't the reality for us. And so I feel like having that trauma and then coming here and experiencing in a time of need more trauma, it was very, I think, detrimental in the development of our nonprofit, Leading Our Children Off Streets, which is an acronym for locals, the acronym for locals. And I think it's been very important, very, very extremely important, because that's how I met you. That's how I met other organizations, even though there are a few, the ones that did the work. And I mean, you know my introduction. When I came, I was like, oh, I heard you do stuff here. Show me. They say you do stuff I want to see. And those type of questions that make people feel uncomfortable, like, get out of here. Who are you? Get out of here. Like, oh, I heard you do stuff here. Can show me. I want to see. And those hard questions, because kind of tired of being kicked around and, feeling like we don't belong. And so that was very huge for me. And I think that kicked off doing a lot of murals here. I get to do art with, I get to do art with 160 kids here at the Youth Academy every 5 months. So now I've got a contract with the cohort that I regularly work with. This will be 1 year now, and I'm starting another. So 1 year, 150 kids, half of the year, 150 kids, other half of the year, that's 300 kids. And then I'm up for my new cohort, that's another 150 kids, that's 450 kids that we've impacted or have had interaction with or have, communicated with or promoted positivity, promoted culture, promoted love, promoted empowerment because of, I think, the lack of,
So how can we be on this journey of transformation with you? In a year, we've got to walk through a lot together. You described it as this life of trying to get ahead, and then it kind of transformed with the burning of your shop into giving back, and expecting that giving back would be met with a lot of goodwill. And, right? Yes. And we've had some coffee over that, where expecting that goodwill, but being met with more resistance. And you've described that really powerfully, very beautifully. Before we go into a time of Q&A, just thinking, how can we learn from your experience, and we who are your neighbor here do better? Hard question.
Great question. I think it's like, even for us, it's like coming in with an open mind, coming in with an open heart and an open mind. For example, one uncomfortable thing for us to do as a family was to go to a new congregation for service, Typically, my family has been Catholic, it's typical. Latinos are Catholic, and what I see though in the culture is like, you can party all week, right? And then on Sunday you ask for forgiveness, you know what I mean? And then on Monday you're right back at it, and that's the cycle.
So you're saying that's not the way to do it? I'm just joking.
No, it doesn't. I mean, for those that need more discipline, you know, like, it's great when you know that you have a strong family unit. You got people like help you stay focused, and like we have that in our household, but we don't have a strong connection here. You know, we don't have a history here. We don't have, so we have to do that on our own. And I feel like coming to a congregation and seeing nothing but white people there, and looking at each other like, are we at the right spot? You know, like what? You know, let's give it a shot. I told Patty, let's give it a shot. Let's give it a shot. You know, we'll give it our best shot. And, you know, like, you're the elephant in the room. You know what I'm saying? Like, everyone's like, how do you know Daniel? You know what I'm saying? How do you know Daniel? That's the...
You're like, I'm his tattoo artist.
Yes. I know. That was prior to the sessions, you know? We tattooed now, but yeah. Prior to that, I couldn't give him that one. I was like, he's my friend. Daniel's my friend. And they're like, Then they look at you, right? They're like, Daniel, what you getting into? So, you know, I think trying new things, having an open mind, you know, but again, like, it's not for everyone. Like, my situation is very unique. It's very different. And for me, that's what was important and prevalent. But I don't tell people like, oh, get up and go, or, oh, hey, change your religion, or, hey, I could only do by example, right? I have a strong presence online. So like, I'm constantly posting, you know, work or music videos or whatever. But now it's like posting positive content, and I'm breaking my head. I'm thinking, man, gangster rapper, tattoo artist, and this and that, world traveler, and we're, you know, now we're changing the narrative, because now I look back at my legacy and I say, well, do I want to always talk about, like, you know, gang violence? Do I always want to talk about belittling my enemies? And do I always want to talk about? No, I don't. It's like there was one point in this transition where I was like, man, I don't think I'm gonna do music no more. You know, and brief in my head, I was like, I don't know, because I wanna be able to feed my kids, but I don't want to sell my soul to the devil. You feel me? Like, I know it's important to bring home the bacon. I know it's important to pay bills, but do I have to compromise who I am as a man, what I put out as energy, who I have my kids around? All of that made a big difference to me now at this point in my life. You know, my dad, you know, divorcing my mom, my parents splitting, my dad surviving cancer, my mother being homeless, all these crazy things that transition throughout this time, you know, this period of growth, but like, you see that everyone else is kind of in the same predicaments. And I never wanted to be stuck in the same rut, or be what systemically I'm supposed to be, a failure, a loser. You know what I mean? I'm supposed to be those things. I accepted that stuff, and my trauma was so hard that now I had to be successful. I gotta succeed. I gotta finish that. We're gonna work on that. We gotta turn that in. We're gonna conquer that, and we're gonna do that, and we're gonna do this. And my kids are going into sports, and they're learning tattooing. And I take my son out of state with me to quote and charge all these tattoos. 13 years old, and he's already running my booth and helping me with merch and things that I didn't have that. My parents didn't have the time to say, hey, let's sit down, I'm gonna show you about the sewing business. Or hey, I'm gonna show you about accounting and billing and how we charge body glove, and you're gonna run. It wasn't like that. It was like a lack of maybe interest in letting the troubled youngster be involved, you know, and I don't blame them, you know, exhibiting problems all the time, getting in trouble at school, not finishing work. Maybe I'd show up, maybe. Most of the time I didn't, you know. I never got my diploma. I got my GED in prison, when the lady can actually sit there with me and give me all her attention. And I felt so accomplished, and I felt smart, and I felt like I could do something and see it through. But prior to that, I didn't feel much accomplishments about anything. I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror in the cell. I had a hard time looking myself because I partook in these in crimes. I partook in you know, that's why I was in prison, right? And so it was even tough washing my hands, and then like I didn't like it. It was very, very tough. And I think on the different side of the spectrum, hard work, you know, giving your word and being responsible and following through, finishing a project, staying up no matter how long it takes to be dedicated and see it through. That meant everything to me now at this point, because I knew no one was gonna save us. No one was gonna save me. No one was gonna save my kids, not generational wealth, not none of that. Not the government, not my parents, not no one. They were already struggling with business. Business was not that great. Economy was bad, lost accounts. Now they're getting, Body Glove is getting their work in China. Why do it here when NATO signs an agreement? Now we can get products everywhere else. It doesn't add up. So I think it was the lack of, you know, the lack of being a loser. Yes.
You mentioned attention a couple times, attention from parents, attention from teachers, and I've got to see you be a great dad. And we have Hendrix here, I think. Somewhere, maybe they stepped out. Hendrix and Patricia. But you've referred to your family as your gang now. Those are your people.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful. Also, just an anecdote before we go to questions. Because when I talked about how can we do better, and you mentioned Spanky and I are part of a congregation together, and watching, I think specifically of Jenny, the story I shared with you recently, where Jenny came up, a delightful, she's 80s, and she was just so wanting to be careful and kind and considerate, and how we can miss the mark in that. She was like, so please remind me of Sparky's wife's name. And I said, of who? She said, of Sparky's wife's name. I said, well, first, his name's not Sparky. It's Spanky. And she was just mortified.
Because she calls me Sparky every Sunday.
Every Sunday. She said, Sparky! Just trying to be generous, right?
I don't want to kill her inspiration. You know, she's happy.
The way that even in trying to be a good neighbor, it's hard.
Yes.
When even the name can be hard to get.
Yes.
But you're loved, man, and it's been so good getting to know you. With that, let's transition to a time of Q&A. That sound good?
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Any questions are welcome. If not, we'll make up some questions for you guys. Don't worry. We're getting the hang of this.
So what's the reaction to people, or how is that because of the tattoos on your face? Is that I'm sure it's a lot of times. I mean, when I first saw you, I just go, oh, but there's.
I mean, I asked for it,
Yeah.
So I can't be upset of whatever reaction I get, and I get them all. I mean, I've gotten, women holding their purses tighter.
Yeah.
I've gotten that at the Kitsap Mall. I had someone, they were holding their purse tighter. I asked for that, but I think what surprises me is people's willingness to express their either disgust or their, or their lack of understanding or whatever the case might be. It's that never ceases to amaze me. Sometimes I get good. I've had kids. I had a child once who was like, because they do these documentaries on MS-13, the prison gang, and they're all covered up, so the youngster quick, MS-13 right away, MS-13, and I go, no, I don't play soccer with no one's head, I've never played soccer with anyone's head in prison, so no, not MS-13, no MS-13. So I think the response is always different. Sometimes I get people like, wow, I love it. Can you stop there? And can I see, and I asked for it. I don't mind. My reason, I feel like was collecting art now. Like I went from getting tattooed and getting gang tattoos to actually collecting art from a lot of prominent artists that I really respect and admire. So like a lot of the pieces that I have, I've collected in, Germany, I've collected in New York, New Jersey, different areas, a little extreme, but I love art. I love art. I think it's a therapy for me, and anytime I collect a new piece, I'm super excited, and this is my job. And what I've heard a gentleman say before, he's like, "Oh man, you wear your business suit very well." And I turned to him and I said, "Excuse me?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "You're a tattooer. You're a tattooer, right?" I'm a tattooer." That's good. You wear your business suit very well. You wear it very well. And people do ask me, "Oh, do you tattoo?" And then I joke around and say, "No, I'm a pastor." I'm a pastor. Can I bless you? Come here. Let me pray for you.
I'm his tattoo artist.
Yes. So that's the kind of the response. It's always mixed. I've had my wife and I were at the Home Goods at the trails in Silverdale, and I remember, I'll never forget this. We were walking through the aisles, and this lady, maybe 70 plus, stops her friend, and they were expressive of how disgusted they were. They didn't have any problem with saying, "Oh my God, look at that. Look at his face. Look at, And prior to meeting you, of course, because you've been my spiritual counselor, I can always suppress some of these negative things that come across me. But that day I hadn't met you yet. So I had to let her know that she wasn't that great looking at her age, like, to be careful, like I'm sorry, you're not, like, you're throwing stones at me, but there's a lot of mirrors here. Go check one out. Like, and then at that point she's like, "Ooh, don't talk to me, please, and that kind of stuff. But I get a little bit of everything. It's part of the package. Like, you asked for that stuff, you know what I mean? And again, I don't mind it. A lot less these days, especially since I'm working on empathy and kindness and just overall trying to be a better father and a better community member and a better friend and better brother. Yeah.
Gives you the opportunity to talk to some different people that maybe you wouldn't talk to before.
I mean, we've been in those situations. Just a couple of days ago, we were in that kind of predicament, and I think my look and my background was a ploy for for bringing that conversation together. And I knew it was just an excuse to. I did a national interview on Fox, and the interview was around immigration and crime and gangs. And so they try to draw me into the conversation, of course, to maybe sound ignorant and add to the, the downfalls of our immigration system here, and really show an ignorant side of myself and saying whatever they wanted me to as I think as a network with the political agenda. And that was challenging because I didn't allow myself to fall for it. And I didn't go with any notes. There was no prior notice to what the questions were gonna be. There was no, we were gonna talk about, I think, because they said they had mentioned they had seen my work through the website and through another podcast that I had done in California recently, but that's all I knew. And when I got there, to my surprise, we're talking about very awkward things that just didn't. I mean, I didn't feel comfortable, but I knew what I got myself into, and I knew going in there was it was gonna be a battle of you proving that I'm a piece of trash, and then me discrediting what you're saying about us as a whole, right? As a whole, and saying like, no, I'm not from the cartel. My parents are not part of any cartel or gang. They've never even done drugs. They don't have any connections with anyone that sell drugs or know anyone that's done any of that. So I think that was, that was prevalent to go and inform the misinformed.
I would like to speak to that.
Yes.
Because I got the Fox News interview clip from Spanky this afternoon. And I watched it. And when I saw that he was on Fox News, I was thinking, what are you saying? And a guy, I'm not going to use the word because there are children in the audience, go home and listen to this interview, and if you don't want to wring the guy's neck, he was trying to, you didn't know what the questions were going to be, and yet you kept your cool, you kept the high ground, and he was saying, like, Spanky, where's that from? Spank, and he called him at one point, and he said, okay, Spank. He was so disrespectful, and you kept your cool. He said, all these Mexicans are coming into our country, and they're thieves and they're criminals, and this, and the guy's getting more and more worked up, and he goes, and Spanky's saying, these are, I like to call these people immigrants, and he was, or refugees.
Yeah.
And he's no, they're the drug guys, and it's all, and you called him on it in a really, I don't know how you did it, in a really respectful way, and yet he was saying, so, Spanky, are you a dreamer? And I don't know that you understood his question, that you were DACA. And you said, I don't see myself as a dreamer, I see myself as a doer. And that was just, and we were going, I showed it to Cynthia Sears this afternoon. She used some of the same expletives that I did to describe this person. But when you were almost done, you kept saying we need to provide kids with options. We give them some other choices so they aren't going the road that I'm going. And you need to have empathy. And this idiot, sorry, at the end of the day, is saying, empathy, I ooze empathy. And I just ooze empathy. And what was the end of it? I've got...
I ooze it or I lose it.
I ooze it or I lose it. And that was the last thing.
That's okay. We come from the same, I lacked empathy too. It was the reason I could commit these crimes, and I could go in.
I don't know why he brought, I think he was hoping to bring you on there to shut you down.
Of course.
But it didn't work. But you be the judge and share it, because I kudos to you, my friend, because you kept your cool, and it made him look like that wasn't attendance. You made him look like.
Thank you so much. I was yeah, looking at it and saying like, I don't know, I don't stand a chance going over there. What am I gonna go and, I'm sitting there pacing and talking to my wife. Well, I don't know. I don't even know if this is like, who sent you? It's with that mentality again. Who sent you? Who sent you? Who sent you? Yeah. Well, so yes, Fox, their production company actually saw another podcast, and it was actually the Fox network in Los Angeles, and they assumed that I was in Los Angeles, and they said we'd like to have a van pick you up to do this, and I go, you're gonna drive a little a ways, I'm in Seattle currently, and they go, oh, don't worry, we got a driver that'll pick you up wherever you're at in Seattle. So literally, they sent a driver to my home. I was like, I'm not driving now. Enjoy the ride and get some work done. If this is not bogus, and no, it was real. I showed up in a small studio, and they hid everything from me. They hid the screen from me where they were showing the images of Trump and images of people committing crimes. You could tell it's undocumented people, committing crimes and things, and attributing it to my look and our conversation, and just spinning a narrative, and I don't know, I didn't want to fall for it. I knew what I was getting there, going there for, and I was just hoping that I could speak my piece and make white America a little bit more aware of our shortcomings, and that the answer is not to lock away or throw away or build walls or exclude. The answer is to teach and to explain and to embrace and to really be an America that we started off being, a multicultural melting pot of a lot of wonderful flavors and faces and art and colors and cultures and all of that beautiful stuff. So it breaks my heart when it's like a narrative that, that spun that represents even like my parents as drug dealers and no good people. I mean, I like to say they couldn't give us the attention they did because they worked so hard at fulfilling the American dream. They came illegally and they were able to become citizens. They employed at one point 48 women that came and sold at their location. No slum, no sweat factories, no slum workers. I remember having Christmas parties with all the girls at the shop, and Easter we'd celebrate it at the shop. And my whole life was, being around the garment industry, and I mean I embraced it. I didn't love it always, because I understood what it meant. It was a sacrifice for the family and a sacrifice for us, but it was just something you had to accept. Now I do clothing, which is interesting as a brand. I do paintings and I do tattoos and I do, of course, merchandise when I go travel and do these events and show up at a tattoo convention. But my biggest passion is clothing, which is so interesting because of my mother bringing me around cutting tables, and at a young age, as a kid, I'd be napping under the cutting tables and on top of the fabric rolls. So I'd nap, on a weekend or whenever I was with my mom at that time in these big production locations. But yeah.
Got a couple more questions out here.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
I was gonna ask, when you're at the point when you wanted to give up on tattooing, what was it that kept you going?
That's a really good question, because I get asked
what was
that.
that thing that was like, okay, well, I'm gonna keep doing this?
So what's interesting is I one of those times that I was gone for several weeks, I ended up booking a flight to a promoter booked a flight to Europe,
and the trip consisted of 1 or 2 locations. But keep in mind, I'm doing music, and outside of the area, surprisingly enough, in Japan, Chicano culture, Mexican American culture is huge. In France, the culture was huge. In a lot of areas, they embraced East Coast culture, Wu-Tang Clan, and Biggie, and but then there was areas in that demographic that also emulated the West Coast culture. So you'd have like Tokyo loved Biggie, loved the East Coast, loved Wu-Tang and anything that was East Coast oriented, like hip hop and the true roots of hip hop. And then there was sections of different areas that loved the West Coast culture, and that was completely different from East Coast. We wore gang attire, and we wore khakis, and we rode lowriders, and so that identification was prevalent. And because we represented that type of music for West Coast aficionados and lowrider aficionados and tattoo lovers and street art lovers, and of course a lot of our market was fans or collectors or people that absorb that sound. And so you'd have Brazil on that side, it's East Coast, and then but in this town it's all the West Coast acts. And so we had a lot of action with traveling to places that resonated with that sound and with that style. I'm sorry, I had a brain fart. Where were we? What was the question?
He was asking about the tattooing. Was it after he took the break? What kept him going? Or
Yes. So I'd show up at these places, and of course they emulated the West Coast. They wanted this style. They wanted to have that, and of course the doors were open for me to tap into this market and that market and this location. So as I booked this tour for Europe, more doors open and more promoters knew I was there. So more concerts and more things. So I was literally in Europe for about 28 days. And while I was there, I remember carrying around designs. I would, like every other tattoo artist, I had copies of things. I had flowers and pictures of roses and pictures of all these Chicano images, but it was in images that I had produced. I mean, I sketched a little and I tried my best, but I was back into tattooing and exploring that possibility. I got a great response. Now I'm tattooing, but what happened was as I'm tattooing and I'm getting back in the swing of things, there's a lot of guys that are doing these custom tattoos and doing these freehand tattoos that frowned on the copies and the copying of designs and the traditional way of doing these pieces. And so I came across these hurdles where like the client would want a certain design. I'd be like, okay, let me look for it. Or if I don't have it, let me ask the owner of the shop real quick. And I'd ask him and he'd go, no, buddy, we don't copy designs here. You got to do that freehand, or you got to come up with this design on your own. And that was like, oh man, that's way too much responsibility for me. I'm just trying to copy the design, give you your rose, and I did it, and boom, bam, bam. Now I gotta design it, I gotta draw it, wow, no way, right? So in the beginning, music stopped me from tattooing because that was prevalent and that was there. Now I'm stopping myself because of the challenges that tattooing was I was faced with, which was, I want your style. Show me what you did. I want your designs. And I didn't have any designs. So that really made me feel things. The last shop that I was at on this tour, I remember I tattooed a bunch of people, a bunch of stuff. A lot of people were happy. A lot of media, a lot of podcasts, a lot of interviews, a lot of this and that. And I remember the last location was in Germany, and the gentleman that had opened up his doors for me, I remember he received me and he was like, oh, Master Spanky, the legend, the master, come, this is your station. I got fresh fruit for you. I got German spring water that we brought, especially from the Alps. And I mean, he was just amazing. My wife works, she's a general manager for Starbucks. We got a whole machine here for you, anything you want, and equipment and tools and this. And the pressure was so prevalent that I felt like he was trying to learn things from me. Little did he know I'm there to learn from him. Because I'm there like, oh, well, let me see. And wow, and I'm at a point where I hadn't tattooed in a while that I wanted to brush up and learn and absorb. And so that was tough for me when the owner was like, well, you're only copying designs. What you've done here is not magical. You haven't done anything, is what I felt. Because as I was there more days, he was more distant. So I'd be tattooing here with a whole crowd of people and the client, whatever, and then he'd be over there glaring at me. He's like tattooing and looking at me, and I'm over here, and I'm like, hey. And he's like, yeah, whatever. And now the connection seemed like to dissipate, right? His excitement was not as prevalent. He wasn't as happy as when I got there. And that was a really tough time for me because, I left there and I thought, well, I'm trash. Like, this guy really, what he's saying is that I'm no good. I didn't do nothing here. Like, I simply copied a few patterns. I didn't do nothing. I remember we painted his wall. I was excited about like painting his wall. We freestyled something on his wall, some clowns, and I was just like, ooh, I'm really doing this, like, trying to figure it out, I'll brush. And we did some sick stuff on there, but he was very well planned, very clean, very detailed, custom everything. And the guy just felt like, I remember going home and I go, man, I'm not doing this no more. I don't need that. I don't need that. I need to pay bills. I don't need to feel like I'm coming short, like I need to wow you with something. But in reality, I did. I had to, flex my artistic hand, and I was not able to. And I left. I remember that was Christmas. I had made it home right before Christmas. The whole month of December, I was gone. Right before Christmas, I get home like on the 24th, the 23rd, the 24th. And I remember the whole way home, I'm just like, I don't think I'm gonna do this anymore. I don't think so. And as soon as I'm contemplating what this gentleman had made me, feel, I thought, no way. No, wait a minute. What are you talking about? Like, survived being assassinated. I've been shot up. I've been shot close range, like from here to where my friend is. I've been in shootings. I've been in this. I've been in different scenarios where I thought, I'm not going to make it from here. But I got, by God's grace, we made it and we're prevalent and we survived it. And I thought, no way, this guy's not going to stop my whole dream of surviving, because that's what that was at that point. It wasn't me trying to be artistically inclined. It was me paying bills. It was me saying, I'm going to do a post and Spanky Loco's going to be at this city and we're going to tattoo. And it wasn't that. It was tough. And when we came to that point, I go, no, now I'm going to work harder. Now I'm going to do designs. Now I'm going to do paintings. Now I'm going to work all night and do drawings. And literally, it hasn't stopped. This was in 2016, 2014, and since then I've never stopped. I've worked harder than I've ever worked in my life, producing paintings, producing murals, producing things that, I'll do full back piece almost in 7 hours. I'll do a full sleeve in one sitting. I'll do these enormous paintings and murals with no help, with no pre-design, with no anything. I just get in there and just start getting busy. And I think that turning point was super critical for me to be able to say, nah, I'm not gonna quit, I'm gonna keep going. So the answer is keep going.
We got one back here.
I have a question.
Sorry, all the way back.
I have a question about your art.
Yes.
I noticed that in several of the paintings that we saw, there was a woman's face, with white, and then it was like there was stitching around her mouth, but the mouth was open, so it wasn't holding the mouth closed. And I wondered what that represented. Thank you.
Thank you. So the images that I painted were actually a part of the Day of the Dead, or the Dia de los Muertos, a collection. And I feel like because I'm first generation and I didn't have such a connection with Mexico and my culture, and we didn't practice these things in my home, I was disconnected from culturally what that meant. So actually coming to Bima, my good friend Alice was kind enough to give me the opportunity to express myself with that theme and with whatever medium I chose. I mean, they would have been willing to let me paint the walls, I think, at that point when they asked me to come and do it. But I wanted to do big, extravagant pieces and things that were almost impossible to do for whatever reason. Again, my trauma, my need for doing the most and doing more than average, I think. And those images, because I didn't have a strong connection, they were pretty typical images of Mexican culture. And one of the images, the one you're mentioning, is the Niña Blanca, which would be the Day of the Dead girl. But what you see is makeup of a skull on her face. So she's an actual woman with the jawline of a skull, and what you see on her teeth is makeup to represent the teeth as a skull. So it's not stitching, but it's actually skull teeth that are painted over her mouth to make it look as if she's a skull. And it's a celebration of our past relatives, family members that are not with us, that type of deal.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Could you just tell us how long have you been called Spanky Loco? Where does that come from?
So Spanky is my neighborhood moniker. It's my gang moniker. Spanky was given to me by a good friend of mine that was murdered. A good friend of mine from my neighborhood that was murdered, and he gave me the moniker. It's interesting because I was so in depth with graffiti and tagging and defacing the neighborhood that you're always conscious of what letters you prefer and what names you like and what you're drawn to as far as coming in and doing some damage and leaving. And although I had an interesting name that I pursued, it never fell on me. I wanted to be called Turtle. I had a homie that was, yeah. I had a big homie named Turtle, and I was gonna be Little Turtle. And when you wrote it, when I would write it, it looked, yeah. So when I would write it, it just looked amazing. And I could always picture myself writing it, Turtle, West Side Locals, right? Or Little Turtle, because respectfully, out of respect for Big Turtle, I was Little Turtle. So I'd go to, but it didn't work out that way. When I actually got initiated, my good friend Boxer, rest in peace, the initiation is like, it's not a follow like on Facebook. You don't get initiated by clicking the like button. It was an aggressive assault. And if you could withstand this assault from 3 of the people that love you the most, supposedly, then by all means, you were brave enough to be part of the gang. And so the night before, I had gotten into a big scuffle with some enemies, and I had came, and my arm was all busted up, and I had it wrapped up, and I was proving myself, and yeah, I got this guy, and this is what happened. And at that moment, bam, All right, so you're showing off your accolades for the neighborhood. Well, this is the perfect time to make you a full-fledged member. So I had 3 grown men, boom, 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 initiating me. When we were done, I was all knotted up. My hand was worse than when I had got there. And my friend, rest in peace, Osvaldo, he goes, "That's Spanky. That's the homie Spanky." And I was like, "No, wait a minute, wait." And everyone, "Spanky, hey, welcome. Hey, homie, congratulations, welcome. Psh, crack a beer here, homie." And that was it. It stayed as Spanky. As I did music, then the local part came, so it was Spanky Loco. And it just stayed like that. I felt like putting on makeup, putting on a wig, changing my identity, being more presentable for people was just not gonna be an option. I think sticking to my organic self, but showing the development of Spanky Loco and showing the different stages of my life from the beginning to being able to go out and do work in the community and do that, that was very important for me because the face of Spanky is not that. It's not this. You know, it's now progress and success and empowerment and teaching culture and creating coloring books for kids that have Aztec princesses on there and homies ironing and lowriders and different beautiful things that maybe, you know, other cultures are not aware of or don't understand. That was my deal, yes.
So just observation from Dia de los Muertos, the series that you had, there was one that stood out that didn't feel like the others. And I think it was for your mom. Was there a painting that you did for your mom?
My mom inspired him. Actually, she was here during those days. And only because she couldn't take any of the paintings, I would have been glad to give her the hummingbird painting, which is the one that she was really excited about. And
That's my question. Where did it go? Because I was in Mescalitos today and I saw 2 of them, which was beautiful because I was excited to see tonight. Where did the hummingbird come from?
I think in the restroom, amazingly enough. Oh, really? Yes, but I put it there. I think there was a limited amount of walls, and the gentleman at Mescalito's Mexican restaurant, if you guys haven't been there, the food is amazing and the art is even more amazing. There, we filled up all his walls, but then the restroom seemed a little bare, and I volunteered to let him borrow some pieces just to fill some space.
I will go there because that's my favorite painting.
So now you gotta go to the restroom and take a little break in there, and yeah, for sure. Thank you so much.
I'm super excited about hearing what you're doing with the youth in the youth academy. And you said you had like 2 groups of 150 kids. Do you have people that go in and help you be with them and support them? Because you were talking about needing that one-on-one, you know. So obviously you need people to help you with that.
Surprisingly enough, it's a small group. It's my family, maybe 1, 2, 3 volunteers. It's not a lot, and I'm very resourceful. In prison, you can do so many things with a toilet roll holder and some string from your bed, and you know, like we improvise. And when you don't have nothing, we make it work. So even if I don't get funding, and if I don't get support, and I don't get love, and I don't get the respect, we always have my family and people that believe in my business. And then from there, we use those resources to go out and support these kids. And I'll sit there and teach the kids myself, and I'll paint with them and spray paint with them and draw with them, and we do creative writing, and we do all kind of beautiful, interesting activities. Every week is something different. So very exciting. Sometimes it's very important to have a solid, well-rounded team to support you in these endeavors, but when you're not there yet, it don't mean you don't show up for work. Yeah, thank you. Any more?
I think we're closing the party. It's 8:55.
Wow.
So I think the doors lock at 9. That's what I've been told. So I would encourage you to go before then. But I'm sure if you have more questions, Spanky will take them outside.
Yes.
So we're grateful for you all. And
Thank you.
I also feel like Patricia needs a round of applause, which is Spanky's
Yeah, right.
wife. He was really why he is the empathetic man he is today.
Yes, that's real. Two of my main influences right here. My spiritual counselor and my partner over here. So yeah, thank you to you both. I appreciate it. And thank you to you all. Thank you.